your weekly calls. We're quite frankly delighted. Some of you may already know us, but for those of you who do not, Jim, you can go to the next slide. I just want to take a quick minute, and I'm very cognizant of your time, so I'm looking at the clock. We've been in business for, gosh, it's well over 31 years now. Our home office is in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we started as strictly a surveillance company. As things changed in our industry, like the late 80s, early 90s, we had people like Jim Bonk, who started SIU units at different carriers. And we felt we needed to either supplement their SIU units, or for very small carriers, we can actually be their SI unit, helping with fraud, helping with state fraud referrals in certain states. It's mandatory to report fraud, actually in 48 states, and in many states require fraud plans. So we hired experts like Mr. Bonk to assist us with that. As we grew into a field investigative company, broadening our horizons for general liability and property losses. And approximately 15 years ago, we developed an excellent unit that assists carriers, some TPAs, with their actually field property adjusting. So we have different mindsets on how we can assist. We're actually in 104 foreign countries right now, and we're all 50 states. And Brian and I were just discussing how the world has gotten smaller, and you're thinking, heck, I'm in Iowa. What in the heck do I need some assistance for in, I don't know, Syria or Italy or whatever? We can help, and there's companies like us that can help. So go ahead, Jim.
Excuse me. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Brian, and Mutual Insurance Association of Iowa for the opportunity to meet with you today. As Jane said, I came from the insurance industry. I spent 20 years with CNA Insurance. I headed up their special investigations unit. I was the former chair of the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud in Washington, D.C. Then I worked as a senior vice president for another investigative company before coming here to G4S about 8 years ago. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to share an actual claim with you that was filed in the past, which I think you'll find interesting and very bizarre, to say the least. A North Carolina lawyer purchased a box of very rare and expensive cigars, and then insured them against fire, amongst other things. Within a month, having smoked his entire great cigars and without yet having made his first premium payment on the policy, the lawyer filed a claim with the insurance carrier. In his claim, the lawyer stated the cigars were lost in a series of small fires. The insurance company refused to pay, citing the obvious reason that the man had consumed the cigars in a normal fashion, and the lawyer sued and won. In delivering the ruling, the judge had agreed that the insurance carrier, that the claim was frivolous. The judge stated, nevertheless, that the lawyer had a policy from the company in which had warranted that the cigars were insurable, and also guaranteed that it would insure them against fire without defining what is considered to be unacceptable fire, and was obligated to pay the claim. Rather than endure a lengthy and costly appeal process, the insurance company accepted the ruling and paid $15,000 to the lawyer for his loss on the rare cigars in the fires. However, after the lawyer cashed the settlement check, the insurance company had him arrested for 24 counts of arson. With his own insurance claim and testimony from the previous case used against him, the lawyer was convicted of intentionally burning his insured property and was sentenced to 24 months in jail and a $24,000 fine. This is how I define justice. Then there was another individual by the name of Isabel Parker, who was called the Philly Queen of Slip and Falls. This individual committed 49 bogus slip and fall claims in Philadelphia and New Jersey at various department stores, supermarkets, and yes, liquor stores, and received over $500,000 in settlements over a 7-year period. How did she not get caught? Well, she used 47 alias names, 33 false Social Security numbers. Prosecutors said that she treated her insurance claims like a full-time job. She subsequently pleaded guilty to 29 counts of insurance fraud and theft in New Jersey alone. And the kicker was she was 72 years old. Our name, let's get back to the presentation. Each of these red dots here on this slide represents the 460 some surveillance claims and SAU investigators that we have throughout the United States. As Jane said, we've been in business for 31 years, 31 years, and our staff are licensed professionally and highly trained and experienced investigators. We have staff in the UK, Australia, Puerto Rico, Ireland, and we're pursuing some other areas as well. Basically, our name has been synonymous with the highest standards of integrity and service in the investigations marketplace. We assist our clients in making timely, accurate, and informed claim decisions by conducting fact-finding investigations, identifying supporting and non-supporting evidence, also retrieving documents, interviewing individuals, obtaining and documenting physical evidence. We're basically, our staff are the eyes and ears and boots on the ground for our clients. So we're talking about some of the fraud statistics here. As you know, insurance fraud is perceived as a victimless crime perpetrated against a faceless insurance company. Individuals justify their fraudulent claims in hopes of making up for premiums that they paid for in the past. They believe that insurance company has very deep pockets, tall buildings, and they feel they have a sense of entitlement since the insurance company has been ripping them off for many, many years with high premiums. Too many consumers believe that insurance fraud is justified. The environment of tolerance makes it easier for con artists to operate safely. People believe it's just basically free money. Basically, fraud is not restricted to gender, race, location, age, occupation, religion, or income. Anyone can be involved in insurance fraud. Many of the people think they will not get caught. These insurance cheaters view insurance fraud as a low risk, high reward game, is far safer than drug trafficking or armed robbery. They see it as a quick and easy way to make money. After the arrest of a bank robber, I asked him why he robbed banks, and he responded, that's where the money is. The same applies to insurance fraud. Effectively fighting fraud is an important step to keeping insurance costs down and protects their insureds and their employees in their businesses. So here's some interesting and startling statistics about fraud, the problem. 10% of Americans don't believe that insurance fraud hurts anybody. Probably that's why 10% of all claims have some element of fraud. 68% of consumers believe that insurance fraud happens because people believe they can get away with it. 86% of Americans think insurance fraud leads to higher rates for everyone. 33% of doctors actually exaggerate the severity of patients' illness to help early discharge from the hospital. 23% of those 18 to 34 years of age males agreed to increase claim amounts to make up for earlier premiums. And 25% of Americans say it's okay to pay out a claim to make up for past premiums. There's some more fraud statistics. Insurance fraud happens every day in every state. People of all races, income, and ages are victimized. Insurance fraud over the years has been very difficult to measure because so much of it goes undetected. Many carriers just pay fraud to close claims and consider it as a cost of doing business. Fraud has been considered as the second most costly white-collar crime in the United States, only second to tax evasion. So some of the other stats, more than 3 Americans say it's okay to exaggerate insurance claims to make up for deductible. 1 in 4 Americans say it's okay to pad a claim to make up for premiums. They may increase their auto damages and say that, from prior damage, include that in their claim. More than 76% of the people say that they're more likely to commit insurance fraud during an economic turndown, which the pandemic obviously was part of that. Approximately 1 in 10 Americans would commit insurance fraud if they felt confident in getting away with it. So the key to any successful investigation is to get engaged early in the claim process and obtain all the details about the loss and the injury. Every claim is unique and requires information to make the best and quickest claim decision. Our goal is to resolve claims in the least amount of time, which will result in the lowest claim dollars to all of you. Sorry. So here are some more interesting facts. The average household pays about $1,000 per year in the form of increased premiums, as well as the increase of costs of goods to offset the cost of fraud. In the fraud industry, we have what we call the fraud triangle theory, which suggests that there are three factors that drive fraud, those being opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. Opportunity is the circumstances that allow fraud to occur, and the fraudsters must be given an opportunity to commit the fraud. The pressure can be medical, financial, or any other type of need, and then the rationalization takes place in the mind of the fraudster. Many fraudsters reason their actions and believe they're not going to do anything wrong. So when people perceive they're less likely to get caught, the more likely they'll try to deceive. Financial pressures and the individual's ability to rationalize or justify fraud combines with the perceived opportunity to increase fraud. The perception of opportunity is higher today with the pandemic because there are fewer face-to-face investigations. More remote and virtual interactions can make people believe they're less likely to get caught. So here we're talking about $80 billion a year from Americans' consumers. Property steals about $30 billion each year, and fraud occurs in about 10% of all claims. Work comp is about 30% of all claims, and the reason for that is maybe the injury is legitimate, but the person decides they want to malinger. They enjoy sitting at home watching TV or doing things that they normally wouldn't do. So we talk about some of the liability fraud indicators. Suspicious claims have some common attributes, which the insurers and anti-fraud organizations like the National Insurance Crime Bureau, the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud, the International Association of Special Investigations Unit, they've all collated a list of red flags by line of business to be used by the industry to determine whether further investigation is required for the identification of suspected claims. Basically, red flags are just that. They're indicators, they're triggers. They can help identify potential fraud schemes, but remember, red flags are only indicators of suspicion, and when identified, it must be properly investigated and vetted to determine their significance and relevance to the reported claim. One of the advice I always give adjusters is that if you do find some suspicion about somebody, don't document that in your file, because then you're going to be spending your time defending a libel slander lawsuit. That's information that obviously we don't want to have in our files. So even the presence of several of these indicators, while suggestive of possible fraud, does not mean that fraud has been committed. Fraud is not identified until it's been adjudicated as such through criminal process or civil process. Telemedicine is a new fraud opportunity, which is considered the new insurance fraud pandemic. Stage auto accidents are beginning to increase, especially now with telemedicine. There's also some increases in business interruption claims, which will probably be in the courts for years to come. So here are a few of the red flags related to general liability claims. An individual wants to conduct everything in person. They avoid the use of telephone or mail because of the criminal charges for that are related to fraud for that. They might be very eager to accept blame for an accident, overly pushy for a quick settlement. A lot of times they'll even, request to talk to a supervisor and create all kinds of issues, try to get their claims settled. One or more of the claimants may be an out-of-towner, use a PO box. The claimant threatens to go to attorney. So they're very basic red flags here, but we have more that we could provide to you, but these are some of the most common liability fraud indicators. Here are some of the property ones. Even with the pandemic over the past year, insurance fraud remains a very lucrative profit center for the fraudsters. Although the claim volume has been down in the insurance industry, with some carriers reporting as much as a reduction of 30%, depending on line of business, we're still experiencing a strong uptick in the volume of fraud investigations. I know we had a few clients ask us if we should still be doing surveillance during the pandemic, and I'm here to tell you that we had some of our best results during the pandemic because people were home and doing things outside the restrictions, and it really gave us a lot more evidence than we've ever had in the past. In the fraud fighting community, we've seen several new fraud schemes across all lines of business. Some are the deja vu of the past, but many new types of fraud developed due to pandemic. We continue to see arsons of homes and businesses, as well as claims associated with the civil unrest, with the looting and damages to business. And we're beginning to see some of those being inflated as well with inflated theft and damage and fire losses. False claims seem like a justifiable lifeline instead of bankruptcy, or individuals losing their homes, their businesses, or throwing a family out in the streets. So here are some of the traditional red flags for you to remember as it relates to property, commercial losses that involve seasonal inventory. The claimant or the insured is overly pushy. There might have been a recent separation or divorce. The losses occur just before coverage takes effect, or just before it ceases, or just most recently been increased, and then all of a sudden we have a loss. So there's a lot of different indicators here, or triggers for you to take a look at. Again, we can give you laminated cards of all these different indicators so you can have at your desk. So then we talk about some of those same indicators, but specific to fire claims. The building or contents were up for sale at the time of loss. There may be a incendiary fire. It may not be incendiary, but be suspicious or undetermined. The building may or business was recently purchased. So there's a lot of different indicators that relates to that. Do you have any questions? I think we have a chat here, right, Brian?
Yes, certainly. If you have any questions, take yourself off mute, put in the chat session. I'd be glad to address that with the speakers as well. So feel free to jump in anytime if you do have a question.
Thank you.
There are none in the chat session right now. Okay. And I don't see anybody putting their hand up or anything. So I would say go right ahead, Jim, continue.
Thank you, Brian. I put together a couple property case studies for you so we could talk about what we do and how we do it and what the outcomes may be. The first case study is actually the insured is a college student at the University of Ohio. The first notice of loss was that the insured reported a fire in his kitchen between 1:30 and 2:30 in the morning. Just a little bit of background. He stated he turned on his stove to make some oatmeal, but did not put anything on the stove, went to the bathroom, returned a few minutes later, found the stove, cabinets, and counter on fire. The smoke was very heavy and the fire was too much for him, so he left the apartment and he called 911. Another background information, the insured took out the rental policy at about 10:30 the day before, 10:30 at night, day before the fire. So as part of our review of the file, it was referred to one of our SAU consultants, developed an investigative action plan. We wanted to conduct an ISO index to find out if there was any prior claims. Took a recorded statement. We planned to take a recorded statement insured, lock him into the facts of the loss, conduct an origin and cause of the fire, background, civil criminal check of the insured, determine if there was any witnesses, conduct the neighborhood canvas check, and then review the contents of the information that he claimed was lost or damaged. So some of our findings, the facts of the loss and timeline were verified during a recorded statement. The insured stated that he had purchased a minimum amount of insurance because his mother insisted he obtain some type of insurance coverage. He reported he didn't expect to benefit or get anything from making a claim. He says that he pays his rent and bills with the student aid checks, but was behind on bills because he did not receive the student aid yet. A notice to vacate the apartment and a disconnected notice from electric company were discovered during their investigation. The cause of the fire was undetermined. However, based on information available and our interviews with the insured, an incendiary fire could not be ruled out. Surveillance of the building showed the insured going outside in front of his building, looking up towards his balcony, and going back inside his building several minutes prior to the fire department arriving. He denied any criminal prior criminal history other than some traffic violations, although we did find a conviction of them making a false statement to secure a license. This obviously met the threshold for mandatory referral to the State of Ohio Fraud Bureau. The insured was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated arson. He pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of 4th-degree felony arson. Was sentenced to 3 years of community control or community service, which he got off pretty easy. The second one, this was a term one policyholder reported 2 losses in less than 3 months. The first notice of loss was the second claim filed by insured, who alleged that more than $25,000 of property was stolen from his residence. The insured claimed multiple expensive items. He initially stated that he had no proof of ownership. These again are some of the red flags. The company name on the receipt was misspelled, as well as the receipt itself contained many misspelled words. The facts of the loss obviously were verified again through the insured statement. The insured initially stated he had no proof of ownership for the items. He stated he used a money order to purchase the items reported stolen. We did an interview with the insured's landlord who revealed that the insured had been out of work for some time. The ISO index report showed 1 prior claim. The receipts that the insured provided determined that the company list on the receipt did not exist. In addition, each of the invoice items was in excess of $1,000. However, money orders are not sold in amounts exceeding $1,000. So the police report showed that the door with lock was still intact, although the catch for the lock was pried away from the frame. So again, these facts met the mandatory reporting standard or reasonable belief, and a state fraud referral was filed in Pennsylvania. The insured was subsequently arrested and pled guilty to 1 count of 3rd-degree insurance fraud. He received probation and was ordered to pay a $500 fine and provide 50 hours of community service. Jane?
Jane, you're on mute.
I knew I was going to do that. I was preparing, but I knew it. It's kind of interesting because some of the losses that you may incur are not a lot of money, maybe $500, maybe under $1,000. And to spend a lot of money investigating, it just doesn't make logical sense. But at the same time, to spend a few dollars, either learning your own internal SIU or having a very good adjuster dig deep or having us do a desktop and referring these to the State Fraud Bureau will absolutely help. The fraudsters nowadays, Jim, and I think you can agree with me, they're going after small losses, small claims, because they know the adjusters are busy. They have a lot of these claims are in fast track units, and their job is to get it in, get it out, and go on to the next claim. And that is a huge area that we're seeing for fraud, just because they know if they submit a huge loss, 50,000, 100,000 and up, you're going to get somebody like Jim Bonk knocking on your door. So company policy, you got to decide what you're going to do, pay all these losses or take the time to just wisely spend a few dollars to investigate them. I will tell you also that it is up to the insurance industry to police themselves. I mean, look at our cities. I mean, it's even getting worse. There's demonstrations and property destruction and COVID. I don't think anybody really cares about a $5,000 insurance claim. They're just not. So it is really up to the insurance industry and the online adjusters, to take a hard look at some of their claims and decide what they're going to do with them. It's just, and the other thing that's not on here, you get all these red flags, which are actually very, very good. One that's not on here, and I've been in the business for about 33 years, is an adjuster or a SIU's gut instinct. And I know Tony has been on both sides of the fence. Something doesn't seem right. Maybe there's just a little bit, whether their voice or maybe they lie to you about something. And I don't know if I look at that as like your kids. Once they lie to you once, you're not going to believe anything. So it's really up to the adjuster with that gut instinct, whether to go to their supervisor or their internal SIU, or even it doesn't cost anything to consult with us. What do you think about this? There's a lot of tools in our toolbox. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a small loss. We can do a desktop investigation. We work for a company that has actually grown from being nationwide. They're now going global, and they insure a lot of theft for dorms, colleges, renters insurance, and some of their losses are my cell phone was stolen. Well, some you just assume that a professional fraudster is pretty smart. Sometimes they're not, because some of these college kids were reporting their telephones being stolen to the insurance company on their stolen cell phone. So sometimes it's just that simple. And is that reportable? Absolutely. You definitely should. This is a whole list of our services. We do a lot of niche investigations. Basically, maybe you need us to go in person and pick up some documents, records, interview individuals, go to the courthouse, maybe a police report. And then again, of course, we have all the regular type of investigations that you're familiar with. Go ahead, Jim.
Next up is claim scope. I'll hop in here. Yeah, it's just a tough, I'll talk about a couple of digital and technology tools. Can you click again, Jim? Mine's frozen. Yep, go back, there it is. Yeah, it's just the cutting edge technology to scope a loss. In the IA loss adjusting space, again, it's just that for losses, like Jane was saying, around 5,000 or so, but also could be used as a triage tool for us to get a sense of how big and bad is the loss, then we can dispatch accordingly. If we can get the video, I think we might have time, Jim.
I don't think we'll have time, Tony. We'll not.
All right, we'll skip it. I'd be happy to share out a little flyer that has this embedded video. But basically, you can connect with a policyholder without the need for someone to come out and physically inspect the loss. And Claim Scope is our version of, it's just a nice tool to get, like I said, the facts of the loss set, scope that loss. A lot of neat built-in features with the end user in mind, adjusters, desk handler, claim handlers. The process might be a little different than a traditional go out, IA, go to the loss, but the end deliverable is the same. And you'll see a drastic reduction in cycle times, travel costs. I'll kind of leave it at that, but if you have any questions, I'm your guy, come to me and I will help you. Thanks.
The other tool that we use a lot, Jim has referred to taking recorded statements, and I know most of the adjusters do that. However, if there is a suspicious loss, there is nothing better. I mean, look at Jim's face. How could you lie to him? I mean, that is the best way. Now, Tony, he's kind of a nice guy, but he's a dark horse because he looks like a nice guy, but he was an excellent SIU field investigator. Because of COVID and just because of the cost of certain claims, and Iowa was a pretty big state, and there's some rural areas, and maybe you're insured or claimant is outside of Iowa, to send somebody could not be cost effective. We developed this in-view video tool long before COVID hit because of things like this. We needed an SIU level investigator face-to-face with the claimant or insured to get all the facts of the loss, but it didn't make sense, particularly for the past year. Nobody wanted anybody going anywhere, and no one wanted to meet with anybody. So we had a lot of success with our in-view video interview tool. You're thinking, well, why not just use Zoom? Well, our little tool is a heck of a lot better than Zoom. It has GPS. So if they say they're calling from Ankeny, Iowa, and that we can actually find out they're calling from LA. Or we can also share documents. We can, in this particular case, if there's a slip and fall claim, and honestly and truly, I swear to God, I think we're being videotaped everywhere. There could be a camera in my room for all we know. So we always check on any type of commercial slip and fall type of claims, or even at an insured's if there's video, to obtain it, to see if we can get the facts of the loss. That way, nothing works better than that. And through a dual screen, we can actually show the incident and then discuss it with the claimant. All they need is access to a smartphone, a tablet, a computer, anything with a camera. So actually you're face to face with the insured or claimant. And been very telling. We've had 95% participation, and we actually have had about 21% either an amended claim or withdrawal. Many adjusters will ask if they can join the interview, and we absolutely encourage it. But just know we set this interview up at the convenience of the claimants. Sometimes we do them at 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes we do them at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we can do them anywhere, anytime, whether they're out of the country or anywhere in the world. So we absolutely invite the adjusters to join us, but we want to make sure it's convenient. We do save the video. We send a very good report detailing it. And if the adjuster chooses to watch the video, they don't have to scroll through an hour and a half of talking about the weather and the dog barking. We go right to the point. We bookmark it. At this time, they talked about, a job description or an incident of loss. They talk about the injury. They talk about any previous information, and it's pretty slick. So very effective now, and again, cost effective.
There also is a video that we could share with you. Unfortunately, we're not able to share it on Zoom, but it is available and we could forward that to you as well.
Okay, you can go to the next slide, Jim.
Done. The social media solutions, I'll jump in again. Just so you guys know, the in-view, if we do an in-view statement, also comes with kind of a cursory, it's a basic social media search, but what is social media? It's kind of a catchphrase. Online portals, chats, communication people use to stay connected and informed. Everyone uses it in different ways. Since March of 2020, Facebook and Instagram have been quite braggadocious, increase of 50% of traffic. Again, despite the physical distance that separates us, we've still been keeping in touch, sharing our lives. So our social media application is the ability to scour approximately 300 social media sites. We can help capture, memorialize for future use. We know sometimes this useful information can disappear, especially for litigated claims. We can dig in and save for later. We also have a real-time monitoring option. Think of recovery, return to work plans that have kind of been derailed. In my mind, as a former investigator, I think that this would be a good value for, hey, let's kind of keep tabs. And we've got someone who maybe is taking rehab seriously or maybe not. What are they kind of up to kind of stay in front of that? We call it the privacy paradox in the investigative world. Well, where people might know better than to post their lives online, they just can't help themselves. So they post things, they share, they do things online. So it's up to, again, us as investigators and maybe your adjusters to kind of engage us to look where that information is and kind of dig deep.
I just want to just interject something. A lot of adjusters, and really when you think about it, adjusters really were investigators. I mean, 45 years ago, they didn't have, caseloads of 150 files. They had a briefcase full of files and they went out and did their own adjusting and investigation. So a good adjuster really is an investigator. And many of them, are all very savvy with the internet, but I strongly caution your adjusting staff to not, for example, tap Facebook too many times, because your adjuster's name may show up. Do you know, Brian Dix, and it's like, why in the world is this showing up on my feed? If you do if you want to look at them, go ahead, do it once. And if you're lucky enough to find some really good information, print it. It's because it's date and time stamped, and that can be very, very helpful. They might, in the meantime, get represented by an attorney and shut everything down to show how silly some people are about Facebook and naive, and they still are. I just got a claim, what day is today? Wednesday, on Monday. And a woman, it was actually a workers' compensation claim. She injured her left shoulder in a forklift accident and couldn't work, and went to an independent medical exam. The doctor supported her. We did a little bit of skunking around, found her on Facebook. You can't make this up. Now she was kind of a big girl, but not that big, giving her very big boyfriend like a ride on her shoulders, a picture, date and time stamped. So like Tony said, we just look at me, look how important I am. So that's just what I wanted to add about Facebook. Just be cautious about how you use that internally. There's several ways you can refer a case, and I'm just going to, Brian will obviously provide our information. We'd love to work with you. It does not cost anything if you care to consult with Tony or Jim about a file, maybe make some recommendations that your internal staff can do themselves. Have you thought about looking here? But we'd love to work with you. And following this presentation, if there are any questions, Brian, make sure everyone knows how to reach us. And we'll be happy to share this information that we presented with the attendees.
Yeah, and if I can add two things real quick. Just with the in-view video and the claim scope video, we were unable to watch that together, but I can send you a document that has that video embedded in it, and you'll really get a sense of what that service is. So,
excellent. We do have one question that was posed in the chat session, and it refers to response times. So if we as a mutual have a claim that we would like to, confer with you about, and the question itself had response time of investigators for especially fire losses that occur in our state, but just talk through the time frames that, okay, when we pick up the phone and call G4S, what time frame, what should they expect?
I'll take this one. First of all, we want to know what your time frame is. Okay, so this loss occurred, we get the call at 9 o'clock. I just also want to clarify, we are not in the origin and cause fire business, but we work very closely with ONC. We used to be, but our model is to have somebody in every state, and we couldn't quite meet that. So we work very closely. We have great engineers that we work with, and et cetera. We want to know your time frame. This occurred. How soon can I need someone out in 24 hours? So you need to let us know immediately what we need to do. What we will do is look at our resources, and in a very short window of time, say, yes, we can get out there. Our closest guy is 45 minutes away, or you know what? We're slammed also. We cannot get out there until 24 hours. And if that's not good enough, what we want to do is make sure you're allowed enough time to go to another resource. So we make every effort. I know sometimes, especially in fire claims, you want us there before the fire starts, so the scene isn't damaged and things like that. So we'll work with you as much as we can. We've beefed up our resources in Iowa. The map that Jim provided did not include our property resources too. So again, we want to respond. If we can get out there, we'll tell you how soon we can. And if that's acceptable, we'll take the assignment. If not, we're gonna respond quickly and say, can't do it for at least 24 hours. And if that's not acceptable, you can make the right decision at that time.
Jay, you want to talk a little bit about our property IA team?
Yes, I said earlier on, besides, we started as an investigative company 30 some years ago, and approximately 15 years ago, we built from scratch our independent adjusting program. And what this it's a field program. And what this does is supplement carriers' staff. I know many carriers have a very robust field staff, but when a cat hits or something, everybody is stretched. A lot of you may rely completely on field. We'd be happy to help. What we've also done to expand is, let's say, for example, your staff is all tied up on cat claims, but regular losses are coming in. We can provide temporary desktop adjusting too, and help you with that. Very, very comfortable talking about our expertise. I mean, everything from commercial property, homeowners, agribusiness. Tony, we've been involved heavily in Iowa on some of the agribusiness, heavy equipment, trucking. So we make sure we have the right resource available. Brian, if there's nothing else, Tony, or because we have about 4 more minutes, anything else, Tony, you or Jim would like to add before we sign off?
We just have one more question that came in. It just says, how much staff do you have in Iowa? You kind of touched on that a little bit.
I'm going to let Tony address that because he knows his people personally.
Yep. On the loss adjusting side, I've got a couple central Iowa, 2 or 3 over in the Omaha area. And it depends on your need. Again, as Jane said, if this is an auto appraisal, that's a little different than executive general adjuster with the, you know, third floor of the courthouse flood, that sort of thing.
What about investigators, Tony? Yeah,
Investigators? Yep, good question. What also separates us from the market is, and this might sound too salesy, but that's where I started over a decade ago, is just as an employee investigator. So we have, Jim, I think more employee full-time surveillance investigators on staff now than we've had in our 31.5 years of doing business. Iowa is pretty well saturated. We've got a couple in Des Moines, one east, I think south of Iowa City. Again, Omaha is fairly saturated, but we do cross-license our folks too. So if Anna from Omaha has to skip over and hit Marshalltown and do a surveillance over there, she's comfortable doing that too. Same thing with you know, up in the Decorah area if they've got to travel around a little bit. But
besides surveillance, our SIU and claim staff. First, I think that would be of interest too.
Yeah, Jim oversees definitely the SIU team too. I've gotten to know our SIU investigators too. Again, I started out doing surveillance and then also did the SIU field work. So I'm very confident in our guys. They're just really thorough and can get to the bottom of stuff. So.
Jim, anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to thank Brian and the rest of you, the participants of this seminar here, and thank you very much. And if we can ever be any assistance, please let us know. That's our contact information on the screen, and we'd be more than happy to forward you any of the other videos that we weren't able to show on this presentation. But thank you very much. Truly appreciate it, and have a great week. Happy Easter.
Well, thank you, Jim, Jane, Tony. Appreciate you taking the time and your afternoon to touch base with our membership and supply some information to us. As always, if anybody wants to see this video, let me know. We do record it and I can get that to you as well. And just a reminder, our next informational Zoom discussion session will be April 21st. Unfortunately, between area meetings and board meetings coming up, that'll be my next availability. So April 21st, we'll have Chad Slater on from Venture to talk to us about subrogation. So see that invite coming out here in the next couple of weeks and look forward to that.
Right.
So everybody have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.